Our housing joint first of all. We're going to need a housing jig, which is designed to be used with DeWalt router with a 6mm bit. The dimensions for the drawing are on here, which you'll be given, and this is what we are trying to achieve for a housing joint, and then we're going to do a rebate joint on a different jig. So, first of all, we're going to take your two pieces of MDF wood that have been cut for you, and we're going to put them into our housing jig. Now, if we're using the router blade will spin, and it will tend to try and push this away, depending on your direction of travel, from our fence or our guide. So what we're going to need to do is take a very thin wedge, and we are going to clamp it into position, give it a little tap with a mallet, not too much or you'll struggle to get it out again, a little bit more, and that will hold it in place. We use a thin wedge because anything thick, the blades will come down and it may, if it hits it, send it flying out, and that could be a danger. So we're going to make sure we use a thin wedge to do this cut. First we need to decide how deep to set our depth gauge. The depth of this, if we look at our drawing, is 8mm deep, and the cut itself, the housing cut itself, is going to be about 40mm away from the edge, but we don't need to worry about that. Our guide has been set to that depth. So how do we set this blade, or this cutting bit here? Well, if you bring it down to contact with the surface, and when that happens we bring down our depth stop until it touches the base. At this time we use our indicator here and we indicate 0. Then we take it to one side, and now we can bring this up, move the depth away until it goes to 8mm, and then we're happy with that. We can lock that position. That will enable the depth to go, the cutter to go to the right depth every time, without any chance of it being incorrect. For our first cut, we're ready now to go. We are not going to cut the full depth in one hit. We're going to take a first pass, otherwise put too much stress onto our cutter. And to do that, all we do is turn this little index here around one turn, so our depth now goes down to hit the top of that little screw thread there instead. And we can take our first pass with that. So, the on-off is under here. You don't need to pull it up from this, you can just turn it on with your fingers underneath. Make sure you're wearing appropriate safety equipment, hair tied back, goggles on, aprons on, make sure no one's near you, and make sure you're not going to cut through the lead. Move our little indexer, so we do our final pass. The depth will now go down to the full depth. It's not reaching yet obviously, but that has now gone down to the full depth. At this stage, well not this stage, throughout you're going to have someone with a vacuum cleaner making sure that all the MDF dust gets sucked away. I can't demonstrate that to you because I'm working by myself. When we make our passes, we want to go, as I'm standing at it at the moment, we want to go from left to right. The reason being is our blade is spinning in this clockwise direction, and the blade will turn and it will push our work against this guide. It is actually incorrect in general for notes. We'd normally want to always push against the direction of the cutter, but for what we're doing, if we're using two hands and we're using this jig, is actually safe. You never normally want to do it because the work will get pulled through the cutter and will go flying out the other end. That will ruin your work, but it might also pull you into the cutter. But like I say, if we're using two hands on this, standing over it, moving from left to right, that is going to work in our case. So I'm going to turn on and wait for the blade the cutter to warm up, get up to full speed. And we'll take a second pass to be sure. Okay, and that is our housing joint made correctly using our jig.